Okay, so today, in the next 20 minutes or less, I will be speaking on the topic of street communities and how they are emerging currently as a trend that we are seeing in Ghana. Street communities, I would say that over the past few years or in recent years, has been a topic that has been coming up, especially for those of us working with children and families in street situations. Currently, I would say 20 years ago, when I first had the opportunity to work on the street, I did see, quite a difference between what was pertaining 20 years ago in Ghana and what is pertaining today. And today we see more of families and children together on the streets, living there in the urban centers. So before we proceed, I will take a little tour around the world to try to understand where we have come from and where we are today and why we are talking about this topic of street communities. And world over, it has been acknowledged by the United Nations and all other credible sources that population is on the high. Population growth continues to go up. Currently in the world, we are about 8 billion people. And by 2050, it is expected that the world population is growing up to 9.7 billion. By 2017, we learned that we have over 1 billion people who are living in slums. And in Africa, the situation is not different, with about 17% of the total world population currently in Africa, about 1.4 billion. And in Sub-Saharan Africa, we are also expecting that by 2050, the population today will double. That is increased by 100%. It is also projected that by the year 2050, the entire population of Africa in the urban centers will be 60%, suggesting that there are going to be more and more people in the urban areas compared to the rural settings. And this is where the questions begin to arise. In Ghana, the population growth is no different, with an annual rate of 2.1% compared to the world average of 0.9%. And this is quite a difference. The urban population currently in Ghana stands at 56.7, almost 57%. But in about eight years, in about 6 years from now, we are still expecting that the urban population is going to grow to 65% in Ghana. And this suggests that if we have the same land space, if we have the same resources and amenities in these urban centers, but population in the urban centers continue to rise, then there is the situation where we are going to have population density on the high and pressure on social amenities like housing, sanitation issues, and things like this. These are also coupled with other challenges of inflation, currently hovering around 45%, and other basic goods also prices increasing up to 200% over the last 2 years. And this has also been quite overwhelming. This is constantly creating the need for children and families to now find ways and means to survive. And by engaging in other economic activities that deny children of school, that deny them of other basic fundamental human rights. In 2020, the COVID-19 had its own effect, where schools were closed down for 9 months. And this also caused some number of children moving to the streets, and that we have some of these children were not able to go back to school because of the challenges that the COVID-19 posed and the closure of school for 9 solid months. Currently, in Ghana, according to the population census, there are about 400 children, 400,000 children who are engaged in economic activity, mainly on the streets. And in the capital of Ghana, Accra, we have over 100,000 children engaged in street activities in Accra alone. Out of this, which suggests about 25% of these children in Accra. We have observed that based on these statistics, we have worked on the streets for all these years. Fortunately for Chance for Children, this year we are celebrating our 25 years of action for children connected to the streets. And over the past years, we have come to the realization that the increasing population in the urban areas is not only due to birth control issues, but also mainly due to the rural-urban migration situation that we have currently. The map on my right briefly illustrates how the trend has looked like. And the arrows are also showing where the migration routes have been. And generally, we can see the arrows pointing downwards from the north to the south. Probably a brief background to show that in Ghana, mainly in the northern parts of the country, it is dominated by rural communities where there are mainly farms and not much of economic activity going on, not much of recreation and social amenities present, for which reason people easily migrate down to the southern areas where you find most of the urban centers of this country. It is also interesting to see that of all these migrants, the statistics is showing that about 77% of the migrants are actually women. And now we have more women moving down south. And the trend that we have observed is that when women are moving, they move with their children. They are not leaving their children also behind. There are other topics of less empowerment for women, mostly in the northern areas, where women are also not mainly entitled to, for example, land, which is also the main resource in the north that is for farming. So if women do not have this economic power of acquiring land, then they also may want to find other ways of engaging in economic activity to earn a meaningful living, for which reason, while they migrate down south, they come down also with the children. Now, when the children come, we also realize that about 80% of these children who are migrating down south are mainly not consistent in school. 73% of the children that we have interacted with on the streets, we have also identified that they are migrants. So the situation is pointing clearly also towards the fact that migration is ongoing and it is increasingly contributing to children and families finding themselves on the streets. What are street communities as we speak? For the purpose of this discussion, I would want to define what we mean by street communities here, so that we are all on the same page. So this is an operational definition. Really, from the trends that I have given, we have families who are migrating from rural areas to the urban areas. Now, when they get to the urban areas, they are mainly engaging in activities that will earn them income. The key activities we have identified are sales, selling of various goods and services, as well as into fishing activities. Now, once they find economic activity in these areas in the urban centers, these families now decide to find solutions regarding where they will stay, accommodation, and all that. So they end up building structures, mostly wooden structures and other unsafe dwellings, and then they live there. And mainly these structures are located where the work activities really are. So if it is a market, then they are building the structures also just around the markets, then they settle there. Now they settle there with their children with no immediate intention of going back. So in these communities that we are calling street communities, they are mainly found within the Golden Triangle. I'm calling the Golden Triangle here is referring to the triangle that you see in the southern part of the map. And this is where we have seen street communities developing. The Golden Triangle also we are calling it because within these areas, this is where we see majority of children in Ghana hovering about to engage in economic activity because these are the key urban centers that we have. So I take us back to our interactions with the street communities, and we find that 90% of the children that we interacted with in street communities are living with their families. And it comes with other consequences. The characteristics of street communities are clear. There are land tenure issues where the communities, the families and children on the streets do not have ownership of the land that they are sitting on, and so creates a lot of destabilization and dysfunctionalism, um, apparently because they are occupying the land illegally. And so at any point in time, these places can be demolished by the local authorities. And so there is quite a huge instability. There are weak social structures. You do not see leadership in these communities. People go about their business individually. In the places where street communities are, there are different kinds of cultures. There is not a homogeneous way of life because people are coming from different backgrounds. Access to essential services like health, education are absolutely limited. They are characterized also by large families, for which reason the numbers in the street communities are increasing because the families are large and that overcrowding and sanitation are characterizing these places. A lot of instances, it is also becoming increasingly difficult to trace the family contacts of the children on the streets communities because they have lost contact and it becomes difficult to connect them back to their families outside of the streets. So basically, Chance for Children's approach is to work with the children on the streets. We visit children daily and we reunite them with their families who are outside of the streets so that we can reduce the number of children on the streets. Once we reunite them with their families, we strengthen the families in various ways that the family will be able to now take responsibility for these children. Whilst we also couple it with community prevention for children who are at risk of joining the streets. So we put in place also measures, work closely with communities so that children are not moving from these communities. So we identify communities where children are migrating from the most, and we try to work together with these communities to address the situation. Over the period, we have learned that these 6 key pillars have been relevant and best practices that have helped in our work with children and communities. That it is important that communities are participating in whatever we do, that we are not taking decisions for families, that we look for cooperation with the communities, that we work together to achieve a common goal, that the local leadership needs to be in charge, that we should not claim ownership of all the activities, but that local leaderships will be deeply involved. Educational objective has been one of the core learnings. And by education, I mean formal education as well as skill training or vocational training. And here we equip children and with education so that they will be able to find a better life in the future. Self-help because the people should own the project. The people should own the interventions, the approaches, and that we do not go there to dictate to the people. And these have largely been successful in a lot of our activities. Now, having said all this, where lies the gap? For which reason we have come here? Uh, Based on the emergence of the communities, we have identified that now we have first, second, and third generations of families formed. You will meet a child today who has the mother or the father also live on the streets. The grandfather or the grandmother is also on the streets. Um, This leaves little room for successful reunification. If you want to take the children from there to reunite with other family members who are living outside the streets, it becomes difficult because the generation is on the streets. The question also comes with strengthening families in dysfunctional communities like this. It has its systemic challenges, and there will be shortfalls also in sustainability of the support that we offer. So my question today is, to also know, which I'm sure is one of the key purposes of this meeting, to know what trends are also observed in other jurisdictions, what approaches and best practices have also worked in other areas, what is working now, and what will probably work looking into the future, where we are seeing that the trend for population is really continuing on the rise. Thirdly, which is also key to this discussion for us, is to also dialogue on the extent that families who find themselves in these functional street communities can be supported. The sustainability issues, how are we really going to be able to also address these topics, knowing that these communities are highly unstable and that families may or may not be able to function appropriately in communities with such high level of dysfunction. So this brings us to the end of this presentation. And I want to say thank you very much for the time